NBC 10 at Issue starts now.
Good morning. I'm George Spencer for NBC 10 at Issue. We all work hard for our money, but it turns out many of us don't work as hard at keeping it or saving it. And for obvious reasons, that is a big mistake. No matter how much or how little you make, experts say simple changes can help you hold on to more of your very hard-earned cash. A majority of people who took a recent Fidelity Investments retirement quiz failed. A financial expert with George Washington University says most Americans don't even have a basic knowledge of their personal finances. To give you a test, here's one of the Fidelity Nest Egg quiz questions. If you were able to set aside $50 a month, how much could that end up becoming in 25 years? Your answers: $5,000, $15,000, or $40,000. Be warned, only 16% of the people who took the quiz actually answered this one correctly. The correct answer right there, as much as $40,000. Nearly half the people who take the quiz underestimate the impact that relatively small savings can end up making over time. All right, let's try one more of those. How about this one? How much will a couple retiring at age 65 spend on out-of-pocket costs for health care over the course of their retirement? You think that answer is $50,000, $100,000, or $260,000? The correct answer there, you see, $260,000. Mind-boggling for a lot of people, but remember, that's the amount you would need to cover your entire retirement, which could be more than 20 years. Well, joining me now is Jamie Hopkins. Jamie is the Retirement Income Co-Director at the American College of Financial Services in Bryn Mawr. Jamie, thank you so much for being here. This is one of those topics you know as well as anyone, Jamie. A lot of people, they almost kind of begin to shut down when they talk about this idea of money management. But really, for regular folks, even people making average salaries, we're talking about things that really are feasible for them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for people, as you said, are average salaries, if you think of yourself as kind of mid-America,
right,
actually your decisions might be more important than for somebody at the high net worth level, because they're going to have more room for mistakes. Right. You're not. So paying attention to your credit card debt, your housing payments, healthcare costs, that's really going to impact kind of the majority of Americans, and you have to make smart decisions in those areas.
All right, right. A lot of us don't have that buffer that maybe people in higher income brackets might. Wanted to break this down sort of in two different fronts. We'll talk about some older folks, and then we'll get to younger people, what each of these categories can do. From your capacity there at American College, you see, all kinds of people who work with people on retirement planning. What are the common mistakes that people who are getting closer to retirement are making with their money?
Yeah, there's a couple big mistakes that people make. One of them is just not having a plan in place, right? You're getting to retirement and you haven't even thought about where your income's going to come from or how much you can withdraw from your portfolio. And a lot of people think, I'm going to average 8% in the market through my retirement, so that means I can spend 8%.
Right.
Well, that's not true. It's actually closer, what we say, the 4% rule.
The 4% rule. Tell us what that is. That's 4% of your savings?
Yeah, so that's if you had $1 million, or that's a nice, easy round number.
Sure,
but $1 million, you could only withdraw 4% of that for a 30-year retirement. So $40,000 a year is all you could generate safely for 30 years. And that's scary for people because it doesn't sound like a lot of money.
The other thing that I know is increasingly a problem, it's one of those double-sided coins, because there's a good part of the problem. We're living longer. We're having longer lives. But financially, that's really impacting older Americans as they consider, how much money am I really going to need once I stop having that regular job income?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges about retirement is you have to make a set amount of money last for an uncertain period of time.
Right.
It's a much different situation. If you only have to go for 15 years in retirement, you don't need as much money. If you have to go for 30 years, 35 years, yeah, you're talking maybe 2-3 times this amount of money you're going to spend over your lifespan in retirement, and that's a big challenge.
I know one of the biggest issues is, we all want to be savvy about thinking about our future. A lot of us feel like we don't have the money to be, whatever the case may be. That attitude gets especially dangerous, though, as we get closer to retirement, right?
Yeah, the 5 years right before you retire and the 5 years right after, that's for a lot of people kind of the danger area because you're probably heavily invested in the stock market right then as you've been kind of saving money. And we talk about something called sequence of returns risk. Now, what does that mean for the layperson? It means you might get unlucky and you might retire right around the time period when the market drops.
Think about people who were retiring in 08 or something like that, right?
And that means all of a sudden you might have had $1 million or 500,000 and all of a sudden the market drops 30–40%. And that first year of retirement now, you're pulling out a big percentage of your assets that first year. And that really can impact the next 30 years of your life.
So what I'm hearing you say for these older folks is just sort of bite that bullet, have that uncomfortable conversation, admit what you don't know, and bottom line, you're saying you got to have some sort of plan, some sort of path that you're working towards.
Yeah, and what we see is people who have plans in place, like that quiz you did earlier, they do better on that quiz. If you get a plan in place, you know more, and all of a sudden we see that their finances are better through retirement. So planning is crucial here. So
for older folks, for everyone, of course, having a plan, that's sort of the older demographic. For anyone who's younger out there and might be watching, I know, especially for myself in my 20s, you feel like, how could I save for retirement? Something that feels so far away, it might not even be real. Is that the common mistake you see among young people?
Yeah, a lot of young people they're not thinking about retirement. You're still thinking about your first job or starting your career.
Trying to make some money,
trying to make money. And actually, one of the biggest things for people in their 20s is building what I'd say is your human capital. That's kind of your projection for earnings, right? Making sure you're getting education and you're finding a career that you're passionate about and can work a long time in. But that also means managing debt. Debt is really the big issue for a lot of 20, early 30s individuals. So making sure that you don't have that credit card bill that's just sitting there, compounding interest on that, and you're then falling behind. So you've got to manage debt at an early age and pay credit cards and high interest rates off when you can.
So I guess what you're saying for younger people then is worry a little bit less about how much your income statement is, how much money you're making that particular year, and think more about staying away from that debt that just bogs people down long term, huh?
Yeah, because if you spend your 20s kind of building up a career, well then you might have a good 35 years to earn a lot of money and set it aside. But if you kind of get sidetracked early on, you're not doing those things, you're spending too much, you develop bad financial behavior, that's going to also last you for a lifetime.
So Jamie, one thing we said at the beginning of the show is this idea of how hard a time many of us have in saving, in keeping the money that we actually earn across the board, no matter the age. Is that the biggest problem that people have when they think about getting to retirement comfortably, is just that they're not keeping enough of what they actually earn over their careers?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is not enough people save what they should be saving. Now, that's a function of a lot of different factors, right? That people have a lot of debts, they have obligations, but take advantage of smart savings opportunities. So that's your 401k, that company match. Right. Use that. Use an IRA. Use a Roth IRA. Use the HSAs, which now all of a sudden are in the news a lot again. Sure. And those are smart ways to save money. And by doing that, maybe you're not having to save as much, but you're doing it in a smart way, which over time will accumulate a lot of wealth.
So those are the topics, Jamie, that I think people in your shoes repeat. It's a refrain we hear a lot. Why are people still not doing those basic things like getting involved in their company's 401k match, for example?
Yeah, the 401k has been tough to get people into it, especially those low income earners, because they feel like they need the money and don't want to give up control. So there are things we can do there. Roth IRAs are a great one. And if your company has a Roth 401k option, that can be great, especially for a young individual, because you have more access to your money. And so you can save and don't have to worry about, I don't have access to my money anymore.
So just by way of example, that we had that quiz just a few moments ago, and we heard that stunning figure for a lot of us, $260,000 in terms of health care over the course of someone's entire retirement. If you're an average person out there earning $30,000, maybe $50,000 a year, how do you even begin to chip away the kind of savings that's required for something like that?
You've got to start thinking about what we would call a safe savings rate. So what you need to do is you need to replace your income in retirement to maintain your lifestyle. So if you start early enough in your 20s, 20s, 30s, maybe that's only about 10% a year you're saving. But if you don't save till you're in your 40s, all of a sudden, to replace that same income, you're going to be talking about 20 to 30% a year, and that's really not feasible. So what that tells you again is, right, we have to start at an early age saving something. And it, 10% of our salary feels like a lot, right?
Sure.
But that's really what we need to do to have a secure retirement and cover those health care and other costs.
And saving, say, $1,000 when you're 28 means so much more than saving that same $1,000 when you're 48, right?
Yes, and really, well, hopefully as long as we're invested properly, right?
Right, absolutely. The other thing that I know is on people's minds, because just this week the news came out from the Federal Reserve about raising interest rates. A lot of people that may seem very obscure or very distant to them. In layman's terms, what does that news that we heard from the Fed this week actually mean to regular people?
Yeah, so for regular people, it's probably going to only impact you in maybe two places.
Okay.
One is your credit card rate. That almost immediately adjusts to any Fed interest rate change.
All right.
So they're almost all variable. So your rate is now going to be higher. You're going to be paying more for that line of credit that's sitting there and you're borrowing. That's going to be an issue.
And so that impacts almost anyone who's got a credit card in their wallet, is this idea. Fundamentally, it costs you more money to charge those purchases each month, right?
Yes, as long as you're leaving that balance out there. So the advice is always pay off that balance at the end of the month.
Month by month. So credit cards, one really big real impact for folks. What's the other, Jamie?
The other one's going to be if you have a variable housing loan, right? So your rate is variable there. Most people take fixed loans for their house, but not everyone. So if you have a variable house rate, that is probably going to adjust to, and maybe not the full 0.25 that the interest rate went up, but it's going to move a little bit, and that's going to move probably next month. You'll see your rate move.
So say I'm a homeowner across the Delaware Valley, and I know that I have one of those. That would be a variable interest mortgage, right? Should I go to the bank that holds my loan and ask, is there a way I can change this? Is that what you'd recommend, or do you just leave it alone at this point?
Well, I think at this point, the rate change the Fed put in, we're not talking about a significant amount. If you had a $50,000 mortgage outstanding right today, it'd be about $1 difference a month.
Okay.
So we're not talking about huge money there, but what we're seeing is rates are climbing. And so over the next 3 years, it could become significant.
Sure.
It's not this rate change, it's the cumulative effect of rate changes over the next couple years. And so we have seen a lot of people refinance their mortgage, go in and get a fixed rate, which today are still historically very low rates.
Right, sure. All right, so as you look at this big picture, I mean, the news of the week kind of dealt with on that front. Yeah. But for a lot of people, money management is something that just adds up over the decades, really. And I think that's what you get to. If you had to say sort of the most common mistake you're seeing, Jamie, across the age ranges, what is that?
People aren't saving enough. I mean, that's
just not saving enough.
Just not saving enough. People need to really set up a budget and realize that, you know what, I can spend smarter so I can save more.
Is that simply about looking at, okay, I know I get paid this much every 2 weeks, let's say, I've got to spend less than that amount? Is that how you encourage people to start? Yeah,
really, it's what do I spend my money on? And if you take a real close look at that, you're probably going to realize maybe there are areas where I can, as I said, spend smarter. So that means, maybe not going to the same, coffee shop 10 times a week. It's going twice a week.
How about one final thing that I've heard work for some people? I don't know if you encourage this sort of the automatic deduction. Every payday, you say you put that couple $100 right into your savings account before it even stays in your checking account. Yeah, from a behavioral standpoint, that's one of the best things you can do. As long you're not taking it, so you're not seeing it, you're not spending it. It doesn't feel like it's available to you, right?
Yeah, and so also when you get raises and bonuses, have them automatically go into a savings account. That's going to help you out tremendously too.
All right, Jamie Hopkins, big appreciation for this, getting a lot of people on track and offering some important advice. The Retirement Income Co-Director at the American College of Financial Services. Jamie, thanks so much for your advice for a lot of people today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.